That's exactly what I was thinking.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is QUACKCAST number 538. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Baines, Pitface, and Tanserine. Hello.
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 Hello. This week we're talking about fashions in the styles and storytelling styles and story types and all new tropes, anything. Fashions that influence webcomics and comics in general to a lesser extent, because, no, I'm not going to go into that. Webcomics mainly because we're a webcomic site and we've got a bit of experience with that. So yeah, the fashions, not just due to like popular trends, but technology influences the way we create comics for various reasons, and the website we happen to be on can influence what we're doing, all sorts of different factors. So it's good to sort of discuss all those kind of things. So before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured webcomic for the week. Kwai featured a lovely comic called 24 Hour Cake. Kwai, please tell us about 24 Hour Cake.
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is 24 Hour Cake by Gentoons, and it is rated E for everyone. Awaken the baker, because the queen will be married on the morrow. A royal wedding cake needs to be baked within 24 hours. The heroes must scour the lands and go on an epic shopping spree in order to attain all the ingredients. Will the additional assistance of Scum, a most worthy assistant, and Theo, a messenger pigeon, be enough to gather the most rare and special ingredients in order to help the baker? This comic uses a full page layout, and it is digitally colored. The original story was started during the 24-Hour Comic Day 2021 and continues to be updated weekly. Find out whether the mistress will be successful in baking the royal wedding cake before time runs out, and read 24 Hour Cake by Gentoons, rated E.
And that was Kwai talking about 24 Hour Cake. Okay, so next up we have the featured music. Gumels has given us another theme. Not another theme to Chatterbox, unfortunately, Baines, but you had your chance to shine in the sun there.
I was hoping. Keep that going.
You never know. But yeah, that was a great theme last week. So this week we have...
Oh, I went crazy over that. Yeah, I wrote Gun Wallace and you sent it to me, and It was incredible. Really. Yeah. Really, 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 really. Maybe my favorite kind of music.
I still have to hear it. Has he updated his regular site yet? Do you know, Baines?
Not that I could see. I couldn't find my theme on there, but it's on last week's QUACKCAST, and I can send it to you.
Gun Wallace, update your page because I want to share it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Yeah. Poor guy. He's too busy cracking out new themes every week, cranking out new themes. So there's that.
Busy dungeon master.
Yes.
The D&D kind, not the me. I mean, I don't know. The guy's got a lot of talent.
Perhaps he's really good with knots. Who knows? Okay. And leather. Oh dear. Okay, so the theme this week is Patchwork and Lace, which is a comic that was featured just last week or the week before or some other time recently. Very recently I featured Patchwork and Lace. Patchwork and Lace. Darkness abounds, walking into a dark tomb past shadows and demon parasites, into mysteries beyond light and human understanding, deep underground where humans were never meant to venture. learning horrific truths about the universe and what lies beyond the distorted baseline takes you down, deep down. So take it away, Gumwallace, with Patchwork and Lace. Okay, hello. Now we're back from Gumwallace's beautiful musical version of Patchwork and Lace, which is a comic by It's a Zoos. It's a Zoos, rated T. So It's a Zoos. Lovely little webcomic there. I think people should read it and listen to the music while you do. So we're talking about fashions in webcomics. And we've already talked about this on our lovely Patreon video and with our lovely faces in animated positions. So, intent if you want to be a patron, you can see us on doing this in live action. So, it's not just drawing style that's a fashion in comics. It's story type. It's the way technology influences things has a distinct change across a lot of different webcomics that you can see. Also, the sites you happen to be on, and I think it's quite noted, not just by me but other people, that say a site like Tapas or Webtoons, they have a particular style. There's a fashion in their style that webcomics will kind of go for, because say Webtoons, at least in their early days, I don't know if they're doing it now because I don't really look at that site, but they tended to promote comics that all had a very similar look, like flat manga kind of stylized comics with muted colors, and that was their big thing. And all the frickin' comics all were different variations of that, like these manga-looking things, and it made the site look a bit samey. But it wasn't just because that was the only comic type that whoever did the front page was promoting. What happened was that influenced all the other webcomics who would look at the site and think, "Oh, I might host my comic here. I do this kind of work, or I'd like to be really popular like these guys, so I'm going to do work in this style. Or I like the way that looks. I want to do that too." So that's how a fashion can develop. It can develop for, on any kind of line, any kind of influence. But that was the case for Webtoons or Tapas, one of those two. They're both the same to me. But you see those big commercial sites like to promote comics that reflect well on them, that they think express their idea of a professional looking, really good webcomic, and that's what it is, that manga kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it becomes influential.
I also have noticed, though, especially in those particular platforms, that at least what is promoted is similar in content as well. It's not just the style. You tend to have sort of romance, or you tend to have like LGBTQ romance, or like that sort of thing. Mostly towards fantasy, fairy tale-ish, or slice of life situation. At least in tapas. Like webtoon, I have never been, so I don't know. But tapas is definitely that. Although, if you dig deeper than the surface, you will find a range of comics. Like there are a few comics that I follow there that are very unique and have nothing to do with, like, in style, content, or general appearance with what is on the front page. But you will need to do digging. And I don't know, I don't think that they are as popular, at least not on the particular platform, maybe in other platforms.
It's like it becomes a mainstream situation.
Yeah.
The mainstream is this style that everyone sees, and that's there. If you dig deeper, you can get more unique, interesting stuff. But because this style is promoted and so many people do it, that's what people are after when they go to the site. They're not particularly interested in the more unique stuff. It doesn't really fit what they want. So that's why it doesn't pick up that many viewers. It's that it perpetuates.
I think it's also a matter of whether they bother to look for certain things. Like I cannot claim that I have been like super digging into tapas to find the unique comics, but because my comic is also extremely non-mainstream for that platform, I guess that the people that like it gravitate towards similar stuff. So that's how I got to find the comics that I follow, like out of the recommendations that come together with my comic.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that it can help group things into a similar bunch, and also direct the readers that those particular comics have to things that they might enjoy, other styles. That's a good idea. It's like Spotify or YouTube recommendations of comics. Not that I'm praising another comic site. Of course, Drunkduck is the only webcomic site. But yeah. Yeah, so...
Drunkduck, I would say, is unique in that what we, at least as a person that have been on this platform for years and years and years, and an admin and everything, it feels that what we promote is uniqueness. So we mean to promote the stuff that isn't mainstream, quote unquote, in other platforms. Like we will promote stuff or based not on style or uniform appearance, but rather if it is something interesting, if it is something unusual, something very well done. No, so we will have the range, not just the stuff that is usually like mainstream in other platforms.
Yeah, well, that's one. I mean, I'm sure Drunkduck has its styles and fashions like any site. I mean, we definitely do. But yeah, we're not one that influences that by promoting. So it doesn't come from the top. It's more a grassroots thing, the fashions. Because yeah, we do promote things that are just really great examples of comics, and that can be in any style or storytelling style or any kind of tropiness. So yeah, it's we're completely open when it comes to that. We don't like to force people to change or to be an active influencer on that, because we like people just to do what they want to do and express things the way they want to express it, and for people to be able to discover that on the site, not to have it imposed upon them. Which maybe if things had gone differently, we would have been that kind of site. But I don't think it's a good idea, really. But yeah, it
sounds better to me too.
Yeah, and also I think we are a lot more all inclusive in the sense that it gives the message that this is a place for everyone, that there is something for everyone, and there is no shade cast on anyone about what they are exploring artistically or narratively or whatever. So, yay! Yes.
Yeah.
Hurrah!
Hurrah, hurrah! But I mean, I don't want us to sort of like pat ourselves on the back too much, because I mean, there's different ways of approaching that kind of stuff, and that's the way we do it. That's the way they do it, and they're more popular than us. So,
well, you know what? I used to feel that way, but now I don't, because if I didn't feel that this was the better way, I wouldn't be doing it. So if we didn't feel as a group that this wasn't the way to go, we wouldn't be going that way. Just like the other people. We're not saying that they are inferior. We are just saying that we prefer our style. Yeah. And that's nice.
True.
Only.
True.
Well said.
So, unfortunately, Drunkduck has been said to have some... Not unfortunately, but Drunkduck has been set ahead to have particular styles and fashions
really?
that are popular. Yeah, back in the day, I don't know if... I don't think it's this way now, but it was said that Drunkduck was a manga site. It's not that that is a bad thing at all, but people were saying our site is characterized by manga. And, I mean, I don't see that myself, but we did have quite a lot of manga at one stage. I think we still do, but it's not our main thing. But yeah, that was a Sprite Comics. That's another thing people thought of Drunkduck, being a Sprite Comics site, because there was a very active community of people. They started out in early in high school, I think. What's the first year 8 or whatever, grade 8. This kind of young people, and they had discovered this style. It became popular within those, high school communities that people develop online, and a lot of them were doing that kind of comic with so-called random meme-based humor, and that was popular, so that became a fashion, and our site started to be known for that.
You're right. I mean, I remember reading that about the Duck back in the day as I was slowly joining and getting my comic together to post my first comics. That was the word. Like when I looked up comic hosting sites, like that. Now that you mentioned it, you're reminding me. That's what was kind of said about it. Like it's sprites. It's like young teens mostly.
Okay.
And not as a bad thing, but just saying like that's mostly what it is. But I mean, I never thought that you were not free to post anything else that you wanted. Of course. So the site's identity will be defined in that way, probably always. Like depending on what kind of comics people are uploading. If a lot of them are a certain style, then it's going to be that. But it's not a forced identity, like from you.
Yeah.
To promote certain styles,
Yeah, exactly. It's not coming from on the high here. Yeah, and that's the thing. say our most popular comic used to be always Charby the Vampire, and that has a bit of a manga look to it, although it's not a manga. We could even talk about like that. That particular comic has a slightly manga-ish look because of the big eyes and stuff, and the hairstyles. And it also has this gothy kind of aspect to it too, like sugary, cartoony goth. And there were some other comics around that were also doing the same style. I don't know whether they were influenced by Charby or they all had the same influences and it resulted in the same kind of comic. But that was a particular fashion at a certain stage. So it was interesting to note that. I think most comics you can look at, you can point to like comics that are quite similar to them in various ways, and you can sort of see not that they are derivative, but they have a kind of pedigree almost, I don't know, or an evolutionary kind of pathway, or just they fit into a particular genre. You do that when you find comics that have a similarity to them. So even Bottomless Waitress wasn't something we came to by being influenced by certain comics, but it's a comic with slightly kinky humor, and it has that slightly kinkiness to it without being adult. And there are other comics that are like that. Say on Drunkduck particularly, there's Totty Comics, which was this very, very popular comic that sort of went along the lines of carry-on humor, if you know that. Pitt comments, Pitt's just typed in Smorty Smythe. M. Organ Comics as well. I can't remember what M. Organ's comics are called, but yeah, they sort of smutty humor. There's a few comics that are in that can be all said to have, that could be part of a style. Not because they look the same, but because they have the same vibe to them. But yeah, I don't know if they really influence each other though.
Maybe in a vague sort of way, like I'm not sure either. It's hard to say.
But yeah, it comes from a thing. Go on, Hans?
I'm not sure if they influence each other in that sense, but perhaps if creators are looking to create a certain aesthetic, like for example for a war comic or for a gothic comic or some specific aesthetic or atmosphere, it tends to look not the same, definitely not the same, but to look like it comes from the same family. And I have noticed, at least I hope, as I hunt for other war comics that are not necessarily, battle at the front type comics, but more like mine, I tend to find similar approaches, even though every single comic that I follow in that particular genre is extremely distinct and uses completely different mediums, and the style is very different, and yet it feels like sort of home, quote unquote, in the sense that I feel that it is very familiar to me, although it is extremely unique and it has something that I personally couldn't possibly recreate. And I'm thinking like comics like that are like the Second Crimean War. It's oh my God, how can I forget? I always forget the titles of the comics I love. So I'm going to Tapas to find it. It's a comic about like a 1940, I think it's called 1945 or something like that. It has a date for a title, which is about post-war Germany, which is amazing. And I'm going to find it and just link it because it should be read by people. It's amazing. And there are also like other comics that have the same feel. I don't know how else to describe it in a sense.
Yeah, they do. What you were saying about looking at comics that are similar to what you do, and say at least you have a bit of solidarity there. That can also, influence you when you look at the way they're drawn. You can think, okay, maybe I could do something similar to that, or that looks really cool the way they did that. And storytelling style as well, that can influence you and further creative fashion. I know that happens to me every time I look at something that's along the lines of Pinky TA, something like that. I think, I'm just going to incorporate that into the art. I'm just going to do that kind of thing. I'm heavily influenced by what I see all the time, so definitely.
Yeah. I found the title of that comic. It's called Munich 1945, and it's really good. And it's completely black and white pencil drawing type of comic, so not like mine. With a lot, I like her style a lot. Also drawn by a lady.
Okay, lovely.
Yes, it is.
Well, to add to this discussion, another aspect of things we chatted about, especially in the Patreon video, is the fact that technology influences fashion as well. And we talked about this specifically with Baines. You're working on Chatterbox, and you're delving into three-dimensional art. Three-dimensional? Yeah, it is three-dimensional artwork. And there are certain models and figures, that kind of thing, that you can see similarities in their usage and the style of animating them and giving them expressions and nice faces. That the technology sort of creates similarities, even when people use their own artistic and creative approaches to do their own particular thing. Another aspect of that is an analog of that in the music world is, say, a lot of pop music now that is currently being produced has a very similar style, not only because people are imitating each other or because they're sort of imitating what's popular. It's the technology that most of them use is the same. So a lot of bands, their music is produced in GarageBand or these Apple tools, which has particular styles. It has particular samples that everyone reuses, and it has like clipping for where to place, aspects of the track along the timeline. So that results in music that has the same structures or the same like timing, and this bit will come in here and this bit, and so it creates this kind of bizarre similarity through pop music that is influenced by the technology. So that's where that fashion comes from, which is rather interesting. So yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the challenge of like technology that gets more and more powerful, probably applying this to music and comics and everything, is that the challenge is to have a vision and be able to customize it. Not that everything has to look and be completely unique. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But to like have an idea of what you want to do, and to be able to use the technology in the way that you want, and not just rest on what the technology does. I'm definitely finding that with 3D art, and I'm not making any promise of quality, as I never will with my comics. But I mean, stuff that's like out of the box looks really cool and looks really good. Like, the challenge of it is to make it look like you want it to look, not just to let the technology play you, like the way a great musician plays their instrument and plays the technology rather than the technology just carrying you along. Similar thing with art, like to make it. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Good point. Well, like I've noticed this when I've looked at you look at the popular digital illustrations that people do. Now, I came into digital illustration in the early days of the modern era of digital illustration, because I got like a Wacom tablet, 12 by 12 inch, when no one had them. They were incredibly expensive. Mine was like $900 or something. It was this big 12-inch one, and people just didn't have, because they didn't make them for normal people. Bamboo tablets, just normal Wacoms. No one had them. These were things that professional animators, professional illustrators, fashion designers, they're the only ones that had it. So I started off in the very early days of that. And there weren't speciality programs designed for this. There was no Paint Tools, Sci, or Procreate, or any of this kind of stuff. It was just Photoshop, and that was all. You had to spend thousands of dollars to get the tools. Mm-hmm. But so our style was developed along what we had then. But now technology has gotten better. The tablet and the pen and the stylus stuff has become more egalitarian. We have it in a variety of platforms and ways to get it, and costs. There's the software is in all different styles and shapes and sizes and costs, and free. So you can get the software to do what you want. You can get the hardware. But there are a lot of illustrators now that are coming to it, and they're using particular kinds of software and the standard brushes in that software, and you go, oh my god, these people's art all looks very similar. There's this particular kind of style where they use these hard brushes. It's almost like a very painterly kind of work, and muted colors, and it's almost geometric in the kind of brushstrokes they use, but it's all extremely bloody similar. And when it gets like that, I start to dislike it, because I don't like seeing the same style done by multiple artists. If it's something that someone has created, then they shouldn't be doing it in exactly the same way as another person. I really think you should be like manipulating those tools. Do your own custom brushes or something. Just try and differentiate yourself. If you're doing it as an illustration, make it look like that. Just don't be in the same form as other people. Anyway, so the technology can very definitely influence styles, because then you have people looking at all these works that are similar, and then they think, oh, that's how an illustration should be done. So you have people emulating that, and that becomes a thing.
Or just using the preset brushes. That's good. Like, so the better eye, like you have a very keen eye for that kind of thing. So you would pick up on that. And that's definitely something I think about with working on this 3D stuff. I don't know if even Chatterbox will go to 3D. Typical Strange will never be a 3D comic. It'll always be it'll be drawn. It'll be a 2D. But then I run into what you just brought up. Yeah, like using preset brushes and stuff. I think it's definitely noticeable by people. By knowledgeable people, So people who read a lot of comics then are going to start to see, like, it's always this style of brush or this style of color or whatever.
It's like in music when you have, people using the same beat or the same chord structure for songs, or it's similar. Yeah. In films, when everyone bloody uses the Wilhelm scream. Or the Howie scream.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, I know some film reviewers. I've seen some reviews where these, like, very knowledgeable amateur filmmakers, film editors, and stuff like that will watch movies and review them, and they'll say, like editing programs, you can get these libraries of sounds, of sound effects, of special effects, like gunshot wounds. And like now that so much is CGI and it's so accessible, like some of these reviewers will point out, like, yeah, that's like sort of a out of the box, unaltered, just from a library of these effects and these sounds. And you hear it, like, you see it plugged into a movie where it doesn't necessarily fit the tone, or the sound is off from the sound that they recorded as they did the movie, and it's sort of done kind of
because it's the pre-made effect that just paste over the top.
Yeah, it's done in kind of a slapdash way. I'm not criticizing that personally, but it's done in a way that someone who really has a keen eye for that stuff and an ear for that stuff will see, like, oh, that's why it feels kind of weird. And a normal audience will go like, this isn't grabbing me. This isn't quite grabbing me. And it'll be things like that is the reason.
Yeah, because they've seen it before in the brain, like...
or it's just a little off, like it's a little too perfect. It doesn't match the sound recorded. In a webcomic and music, it'll be slightly different specifics, but it's like doesn't quite fit. It's like it doesn't engage you emotionally, but you don't know why, and it's because it doesn't quite fit. It's using preset things that don't necessarily fit with. Yeah.
Hasn't been customized to fit in that particular thing. And yeah, it doesn't stylistically match all that kind of aspect.
Right.
Which, that can happen in, 3D comics. That's a very particular thing.
Absolutely can. Yeah, for sure. Like you can look at it and say, oh, this is that asset and that asset. And maybe that's not such a big deal for all readers. It might be the minority, but it is something to think about, I think.
Yeah. Definitely, if people are a bit too lazy, or if some asset gets universally popular or something, and everyone uses the same thing regardless.
Yeah.
I think that did happen back when the models were way too similar. The old Bryce and Poser kind of days when you'd have the same freaking models across 15 different comics. Looking the same way, and then you just get people would get turned off because it would be like just posed dolls or something. Whereas now, the kind of stuff you're working with, the Blender stuff, looks and Daz looks way more interesting. It grabs you much more because it really rewards that customization that you do to it. So,
yeah, I mean, I haven't done much customization personally, but I think someone could look at I've done a million things that I haven't posted yet, but people would probably look at it and say, like, oh yeah, that, like, people who are really knowledgeable about the library that Daz used. I mean, luckily, different people are making stuff and modeling stuff all the time and selling it and making it available. So there's more and more stuff to choose from, but. I mean, I definitely, someone who knows that program well and who knows that site well could look at what I'm doing and say, oh yeah, I recognize all of those assets. So I don't want to take credit I don't deserve for that. It's a very undeserved. And I haven't even posted any comics yet.
Yeah. You've just got the figures there. They're looking good. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different...
I'm a hack, and I admit it freely.
A hack or a hawk, did you say?
A complete hack.
Oh, right. Reminded me of, because it sounded like you said hawk, so I was reminded of the fact that everybody reuses the sound of a red-tailed hawk for whatever bird of prey they have in any movie or cartoon. I
know the sound you're talking about. That's like up there with the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
And the sound of unsheathing a sword.
Yeah.
It's a modern military saber from a metal scabbard, which is not applicable to
to almost anything.
Unless you're doing a 19th century kind of thing, it doesn't apply. So,
Yeah.
or
Especially since most of the scabbards were like leather or wood, not metal.
they go flop or slip.
Okay, or
Slip.
not nearly as impressive as.
Or it's like the sound of guns cocking every single time they're touched.
Oh, yeah.
Chick,
Or
chick, chick,
clicking.
chick, 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 chick.
Yeah, or clicking, like they are not tight. They are not like tightly put together. They're still, the parts are loose. So when the gun even moves around in someone's hand, it's got like all sorts of metal sounds, like
Oh yeah, exactly.
it's like that thing is going to explode or come apart the moment you pull the trigger.
And every shot, every gun is a pump action shot. Every rifle, every long gun, as the Americans say, is a pump action shotgun. Doesn't matter, like if it's a 50 caliber Barrett rifle or a LA-51 sniper or whatever, Mauser, it makes a sound of a pump action shotgun. Chick chick, racking shells.
Yeah. It reminds me of old junta movies over here where they went really in a very bucolic streak of movie making, and they were displaying like turn of the century Greece, revolutionary Greece or pre-revolutionary Greece, and everyone was wearing like the cholia sort of skirt. The one that not exactly the one that you see at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, but the stereotypical white short skirt, the fustanella, which is only worn in specific regions of Greece and not everywhere. Like they didn't wear it in the island, they didn't wear it in the north, they definitely didn't wear it in Crete, but everywhere you have the fustanella. That's why they are called the fustanella flicks, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, that influences. Like probably a few of them were doing it, and then it became a style because that's how you do it. That's how you represent the thing. So everyone does it, and it becomes a genre. Fashions become genres.
Almost like spaghetti westerns, I would say, in the sense that they all had a very specific aesthetic and even like a format almost. So
yeah, they follow not only the look but structure, and that becomes the style.
Which is not a bad thing. I like spaghetti westerns. They are a lot of fun. Okay, just put that out there.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's what Morricone he did the music or he did the directing? I can't remember. Enrico Morricone. I think he did the music for them. But,
he's a composer.
Yeah.
The
ones he composed for was great.
1 second, sorry.
But that is interesting. I was just thinking of further, when I was talking about Pinky TA. Was I even talking about Pinky TA? Well, Pinky TA was fashionably influenced by manga originally. I mean, you see that in a character, a leading character, wearing extremely sexy gear, and being, the main character in a comic that no one else is really wearing such sexy gear. So, and having a huge mane of shaggy pink hair. This is clearly influenced by the style of anime and manga. And I just did that because I liked it. I liked the way that looked. So, Pinky Toe is definitely influenced by that. And there's a lot of other people that are similarly influenced by that. So you'll see, characters with great hair and being incredibly tough and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting to see that such foundational parts of your comic can be influenced by what you see. So I mean, even looking at Without Moonlight, I look at the way Tance does faces and things, and that's influential to me in turn. And especially the way Tance does backgrounds and her action, that's influential to me. The way Pitface did Putrid Meat, and the way Bones was illustrated, especially the work Pitt used to put in, like with coloured pencils and things like that, to create these characters, and the layered gorgeousness of the hair on Bones, stuff like that. Definitely influenced me when I was doing Pinky TA. So, yeah, the things you like influence what you do, which is how it should be, I suppose. Even Typical Strange, when I looked at that influenced strongly the way I was doing Bottomless Waitress, because that has that great cartoony aspect, and it's a good kind of model to look for the way to do a sitcom. You've got characters on a plane, characters interacting. This is what I looked at, the snideness of the characters and the innocence of the characters and the way they react to the jibes and stuff like that. That influenced my thinking when I was doing Bottomless Waitress. So that's how fashions and styles, that's one of the aspects of them that's quite a positive thing, I think. You look at what you like and what appeals to you, you should incorporate that into your own stuff. Not always you shouldn't always try and be Mr. whatever, Mrs. individual, the most unique person in the world. You should take influences. I think the problem starts when we're too one-eyed about our influences, and we only take it for one thing, and we just try and copy that thing in all aspects and don't move away from it.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem. But when you're more eclectic, then you're taking influences from a lot of different places, and you're enjoying a lot of different styles of things and making something new and interesting by being so eclectic and so you're widely varied in your tastes. Have you guys had many aspects of that?
I think for me it happens naturally. I would say the multiple influences are there. It's just stuff you like, stuff you take in. The stuff I think about consciously is one thing. It's maybe just be a couple things. Then the stuff that's there kind of, unconsciously is definitely there. Just like the more comics you do, the more it kind of shows up. You're like, oh yeah, I see, like the way I write dialogue is this and a little bit of this, and like for sure, at least for me, a lot of it's unconsciously. Yeah.
For me as well. Although I do have a lot of things that I don't feel I can reach, like for example, the level of blueprint level detail that you have in Pink TA in your panels, that I don't think I could ever do that, ever. So yeah, I always look at it like I look at things in a museum. This is awesome, and I could never do it. But other than that, I do have influences that come very much from the artists that I have surrounded myself with, which basically is all of you guys and a few other people. So especially in how I approach my panels or how I think of certain things, or even daring break away from my comfort zone, I would say, especially when I do, like, I remember when I wanted to do the dream sequence for Arthur, I was terrified of those pages because I wanted to go ahead and do something that wouldn't have strict panels, and I had no idea how to do this. So basically, I had to think of how would my friends do it, and that's how I approached it in a sense. Very much, how would my friends do this?
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, that's how I get influences. Like when I have no idea how to do something, I always think of, okay, who does things similar that I know of, and I will emulate that, especially from you guys. I get that a lot. So
Oh, thank
yes.
you. Well, I was just looking at the Munich comic you talked about, and immediately I look at that and go, "Oh my god, that is stylistically incredibly similar to a lot of different things that I've seen." And there are standard brushes in there that have been used as well for the faces and the artwork. So yeah, I can recognize the influences, and I can recognize the digital tools as well. So I mean, maybe because I'm a graphic designer and I've done illustration so much for so long that maybe this is more obvious to me than other people I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's universal. Who can tell? But yeah, it's even like the drawing style of like noses and stuff like that. There's a very similar way of doing faces to the way Emmy Claire does faces in her comics. And
Oh, really?
yeah, definitely. And there's a few comics also like that. You can see like faces and the size of eyes, the ratio of the eyes to the nose, things like that. It's stylized in a way that is particular. So yeah, it's interesting to see. It's anyway, we've been going for quite a while. Should we start to wrap up, do you think, guys? Or have you other paths you'd like to take us down?
I think that's great, personally.
Okay. All right then. We'll wrap it up. Well, we could also say we didn't really talk about the early days of the fashions that influenced webcomics. One was like 8-bit fantasy. So did we mention that the Sprite comics, the slice of life, the gamer, slacker gamers?
Yeah, I don't know if it was on Patreon or here, but yeah, I think we covered it. Okay. Oh yeah, Chans is getting going.
All right, well then we'll wrap it up and say bye everyone. Bye guys. This has been QUACKCAST number 538, and we've been Ozonation, Baines, Tance, and Pitt. All right, so
hoorah!
That is our QUACKCAST. See you later.